Okay, so have you ever noticed like when you need to come up with an answer in English and like the pressure is on?
Oh, yeah,
It can be a bit of a struggle, right?
absolutely.
Like you're in a job interview or even just a fast-paced conversation.
Hmm.
That's why we're doing this deep dive into rapid English response, principles and techniques.
I love it.
We're going to figure out how to be clear and accurate and confident even when you're put on the spot.
Yeah, it's like you need to be able to think on your feet
Yeah, exactly.
and respond effectively in those situations. I think it's a skill that can really help you in all sorts of scenarios,
Yeah,
whether it's professional settings or even just like casual conversations.
totally. And, the source material starts with some really interesting principles like active listening.
Yeah.
And I've got to admit, like, sometimes I'm not the best at that.
Right?
I'll be in a conversation and my mind starts to wander.
Uh-huh. We've all been there.
Yeah, but the source material really emphasizes like how crucial that is for rapid response.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're not truly listening to what the other person is saying,
Right.
how can you come up with a relevant response?
Makes sense.
And it's not just about hearing the words.
Yeah,
It's about understanding the meaning behind them
totally.
and being able to process that information quickly.
Okay, so that's active listening, but then there's that whole like brain freeze feeling when you're put on the spot.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
You just go blank.
Mhm.
The source material calls it mental agility. Any tips for getting over that?
Well, one thing that I found helpful is mental rehearsal.
Like practicing your responses ahead of time.
Exactly. Think about common questions or situations you might encounter and just practice saying your answers out loud.
So you're kind of creating a mental script.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not about memorizing a specific response.
Right.
It's more about getting comfortable with the ideas.
Okay, so you're not just reciting something you've memorized.
No, it's about having those building blocks in place
Yeah.
so you can adapt to the specific situation.
That makes sense. Another thing that can be a bit of a challenge is confidence.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
especially when you're speaking in a non-native language,
Totally.
it can be really easy to feel self-conscious.
Yeah, and even if you have a great answer, if you don't sound confident,
Exactly.
it just doesn't come across as well.
Right. The guide talks about the importance of things like positive self-talk.
Oh, I love that.
It sounds simple,
Yeah.
but just reminding yourself that you can do this,
Yeah, pump yourself up.
Exactly. It can make a big difference in how you project yourself.
So it's about that inner confidence.
Mm-hmm. And it can really affect how others perceive you.
All right, so we've talked about active listening and mental agility and confidence. Those are like the foundations.
Yeah, those are some of the key principles.
But now I'm curious about the practical stuff, like what are some actual techniques we can use to improve our rapid responses?
Let's get into it.
One that I found really interesting was about using fillers and transitional phrases.
Oh, tell me more.
I always thought those were like bad habits,
Ah.
like saying or like too much.
Yeah, I used to think the same way.
But the source material actually says that they can be helpful.
In a way, yeah. It's
Yeah.
not about just throwing those words in randomly.
Okay.
It's about using them strategically.
So like how would you use them?
Well, for example, let's say someone asks you a tough question.
Okay.
Instead of just sitting there in silence,
Right, which can feel awkward.
you could say something like, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second.
Oh, I see.
It buys you a little bit of time.
Yeah, without that awkward silence.
Right, and it shows that you're engaged and you're taking the question seriously.
So it's about using those fillers and transitions to your advantage.
Exactly. And it can actually make you sound more fluent and confident.
Interesting. Okay, so what about paraphrasing?
Paraphrasing is a great technique.
But isn't that just like repeating what the other person said?
Not exactly. It's more about showing that you understand the question or statement, and it also gives you a chance to rephrase things in a way that helps you process the information.
So it's like you're putting it into your own words.
Exactly. And that can help you think more clearly and come up with a more relevant response.
Okay, that makes sense. The guide also mentions stock phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I thought that sounded a bit robotic.
Yeah, I get that.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just using canned responses.
Definitely. It's not about sounding like a robot.
Right.
It's about having some go-to phrases that can help you in those moments when you need to respond quickly.
Okay, so it's like having some tools in your back pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can free up mental space so you can focus on the content of your response.
So it's like having a framework for your answer.
Exactly. And it can make you sound more polished and professional.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these techniques can really work together to improve our rapid responses.
Yeah, they can be really powerful when you combine them.
But I'm also wondering how these play out in specific situations, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, let's say you're in a high-pressure meeting
Hmm.
or a job interview.
Those are definitely situations where rapid responses are crucial.
So let's get into those scenarios and see how we can apply these techniques in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Well, think about those business meetings, right? You're suddenly on the spot and everyone's looking at you.
Oh, yeah, I hate that feeling.
One thing that can really help is anticipating the kinds of questions they might ask.
Okay, so like do your research beforehand.
Exactly. Think about the topic, the audience, what their concerns might be.
Hmm.
And if you can actually jot down a few potential questions and practice your responses.
It's like having a cheat sheet.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Kind of.
But it can really make you feel more prepared and less likely to freeze up.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And so what about job interviews?
Oh, job interviews. Those are the ultimate rapid response test.
Right, because you never know what they're going to throw at you.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're really looking to see how you think on your feet.
So how do we prepare for that?
Oh, again, preparation is key. Practice talking about your skills and experience in a way that's clear and concise.
So it's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to sound confident and articulate.
But also natural.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to sound like you're reading from a script.
Okay, so there's a balance there.
Mm-hmm. And remember, tailor your responses to the specific job and company.
Okay, so really do your homework.
Exactly. The more you know about the role in the organization, the better you'll be able to connect your skills and experience to what they're looking for.
Makes sense. You know, one thing we haven't touched on yet is questioning techniques.
Oh, yeah, those are important.
I'm a big believer in the power of asking good questions,
Mm-hmm.
but how does that tie into rapid responses?
Well, think about it. If you're not sure what someone is asking you.
Yeah, sometimes the questions can be a little vague.
Exactly. Instead of just guessing at what they mean, you can ask for clarification.
So, like, could you elaborate on that?
Exactly. Or can you give me an example?
It just makes sure that you're both on the same page. Right. And it also buys you a little bit of time to think.
Yeah, those few extra seconds can be really helpful.
And then there are probing questions.
Okay, what are those?
Those are questions that help you dig deeper or guide the conversation in a direction that plays to your strengths.
So it's kind of like taking control of the conversation?
In a way, yeah. It's about being strategic and using questions to your advantage.
Okay, so give me an example of a probing question.
Let's say you're in a job interview and they ask about your experience in a particular area. Instead of just launching into a general overview, you could say something like, are you particularly interested in my experience with project management or team leadership within that area?
Oh, I see.
It shows that you're thinking critically and that you're able to tailor your response to their specific needs.
Okay, so it's about being a little more proactive in the conversation.
Exactly. And it can really help you stand out as a candidate.
So we've talked about business meetings and job interviews. Those are pretty high pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
Any advice for dealing with those nerves? Well, first of all, it's totally normal to feel nervous in those situations.
Oh, yeah. I get butterflies every time.
The key is to have strategies in place to manage those nerves.
Oh, okay. So, like, what kind of strategies?
Well, the guide recommends things like deep breathing exercises.
Oh, yeah. I've heard those.
When we get stressed, our breathing tends to become shallow and rapid.
Right.
So taking a few slow, deep breaths can really help calm your nervous system.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And there are other techniques like mindfulness or meditation.
So it's about being more present in the moment.
Exactly. And if you're more visually oriented, visualization techniques can be helpful.
Okay. What are those?
Basically, you imagine yourself successfully navigating the situation. Answering questions confidently and calmly.
So you're creating a positive image in your mind.
Exactly. And can actually help reduce anxiety and boost your confidence.
Interesting. So it's not just about the techniques themselves, it's also about managing our mental state.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Okay, so we've covered business meetings and job interviews, but the guide also mentions other situations, right?
Yeah, it covers a wide range of scenarios, from presentations and negotiations to customer service interactions,
Right.
and even just casual conversations.
Wow, so these techniques are really applicable to all sorts of situations.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
The principles are the same, whether you're giving a presentation or just chatting with a friend.
Okay, so let's pick a few more of those scenarios to explore. How about presentations?
Presentations are a great example of where rapid responses come into play.
Especially during the Q&A.
Right. You never know what questions people are going to ask.
So how do we handle that?
Preparation is key. Know your material inside and out.
Right. So you can answer any question confidently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And practice your delivery focus on speaking clearly and concisely.
Okay.
And make eye contact with your audience. Engage them.
It's about connecting with people.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to customer service interactions.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tricky.
Especially when you're dealing with someone who's upset.
Right.
But they're also a great opportunity to practice active listening and empathy.
So how do we do that?
So remember, the person on the other end is probably feeling stressed out.
Right.
So if you can stay calm, listen to them, and acknowledge how they feel, it can really help de-escalate the situation.
Yeah. Just showing them that you understand can make a big difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a sec.
Yeah.
What about casual conversations?
Oh, yeah. Like when you're just chatting with friends, do these techniques still apply?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Active listening, being clear and confident.
Yeah.
Those are all important no matter who you're talking to.
That's true. So it's not just for like formal settings.
Nope. It can help you be a more engaging conversationalist in any situation.
Okay, cool. So we've covered customer service and casual conversations, but what about the situations where you need to be persuasive?
Like a job interview or a negotiation.
Yeah.
Those can be a little more challenging.
So what are some tips for those?
Well, in a job interview, you want to highlight your skills and experience,
Right.
but you also want to make sure you're connecting them to the specific role.
Yeah. Tailor your answers.
Exactly.
Yep.
And quantify your accomplishments.
Okay. What does that mean?
Basically, use numbers and data to back up your claims.
Oh, I see.
So instead of saying, I increased sales, you could say, I increased sales by 15% in 1 quarter.
Oh, that's much more impactful.
Exactly. And for negotiations, it's all about finding that sweet spot.
Okay. Between what?
Assertiveness and flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be clear about what you want, but you also want to be willing to listen to the other person's perspective.
Right. It's about finding common ground.
Exactly. And remember, even if you don't get everything you want,
Yeah.
a successful negotiation is one where both parties feel like they've been heard and respected.
Makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
From the basic principles to specific techniques and scenarios. But what about continuous improvement?
Well, that's crucial.
Yeah. How do we keep getting better at this?
Well, the guide talks about embracing a growth mindset.
Okay. So like be open to learning and feedback.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to get feedback is to record yourself.
Oh, yeah. That can be a little scary.
I know, but it can be really revealing.
Like you might notice things you weren't aware of before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like maybe you use certain filler words too much.
Yeah. Or you speak too fast.
Right. So recording yourself can help you pinpoint those areas where you can improve.
Okay, so what if recording yourself is just too intimidating?
Well, you can always ask for feedback from friends or colleagues.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
Just let them know that you're working on your rapid response skills.
Mm-hmm.
And ask them to pay attention to specific things like your use of pauses or paraphrasing.
Okay, so it's about getting that outside perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, even native speakers are always working on their communication skills.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lifelong journey for all of us.
That's encouraging. So it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. Exactly. And celebrating those small wins along the way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything in this deep dive into rapid English responses.
Yeah, I think so.
We've explored the principles, the techniques, and even some specific scenarios. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to put these ideas into practice.
Me too. And remember, it's not about becoming a fluent speaker overnight.
Yeah.
It's about making small, consistent improvements over time.
And even those small improvements can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into rapid English responses.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you found it helpful, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.